Sydney and the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, what you hear from the member for Kooyong's speech and what you see over the last 24 hours is a real insight into the operations of this Abbott government. You see a government of broken promises. You see a government that is for the few, not the many. And you see a government that is focused on the short term, not the long term. You think about the broken promises just for a minute. Now, I am frankly tired of saying no cuts to health, no cuts to education, no change to pensions, no increase in the GST, no new taxes, no change, no adverse change to superannuation. Yes, I have repeated that once or twice. And I'll tell you why I've repeated it once or twice. I'll tell you why. Because every Australian put their faith, every Australian who voted for Tony Abbott put their faith in the fact that Tony Abbott was up there saying, adult government, you can trust us, we'll keep our words. And what did he say, as clearly as he possibly could have said? No cuts to health, no cuts to education, no change to pensions, no cuts to the ABC, no cuts to SBS, no change to higher education, no new taxes. And this particular promise about superannuation, he made it 14 separate times. He said 14 separate times. He said our clear, categoric commitment to the Australian people is that we are not going to make unexpected, adverse changes to superannuation. Now, do you reckon actually ripping super money off ordinary workers counts as an adverse change? I mean, I think it does. I mean, maybe what he's quibbling with is the unexpected bit. Maybe we should have expected it, because this Prime Minister has said that superannuation's a con. He said it's a con, and we've heard it from the member for Kooyong as well. Isn't it bizarre? Isn't it a bizarre thing to have a government that is arguing against national savings? Since when have savings been a bad thing? We hear that $128 billion will be ripped out of our national savings pool because of the changes that they've announced. Now, of course that hurts. Of course that hurts ordinary workers. Who else does it hurt? It hurts businesses in Australia that are trying to borrow money. It hurts our economy. One of the reasons that Australia has coped so well with economic shocks is because we've had domestic sources of finance. We've had the ability to borrow money at home, and this government would compromise that. So they'd hurt individuals, but as well as hurting individuals and breaking their promise to individuals, they hurt Australian businesses by compromising our pool of national savings. I'll tell you what else. This is a government of the few, not the many. We've heard about the dirty deal with Clive Palmer and the Palmer United Party. He's benefiting one big miner against who? Against almost 9 million Australians who will miss out on superannuation, against 1.3 million Australian families who will miss out on the school kids bonus, $15,000 for an average family with 2 kids going through school, and 3.2 million small businesses. They claim to be the friend of small business. Now, those opposite are interjecting. No, I want to take this interjection. I want to take this interjection because those opposite are interjecting, where's the revenue, where's the revenue? On the one hand, we have a government that says this is an impost on the mining sector. Jobs will be lost, businesses will be closed, investment will be stopped. On the other hand, they argue that the tax didn't raise enough. Is it too big or is it too small? Did it raise too much money or not enough? Too much money or not enough? Too much money or not enough? They cannot get their story straight, because the real story is not that it's too big or too small. The real story is it hurts their mates. The real story is it hurts their mates, and they don't care that what they're doing is ripping savings off 9 million Australians, off 1.3 million families and off 3.2 million small businesses, because they'll always go for the short term against the long term, and they'll always go to support their mates against ordinary Australians. 14 times this Prime Minister said no adverse change to super. Well, we've seen what his promises are worth.
Order. Call the honourable